I'm going to walk you through a practical look at this CO2 ZnSe laser protective window so you can decide whether it actually solves the problems you run into day-to-day in the shop, not just whether it looks good on a spec sheet. When you're spending money on a part that sits directly in front of a high-power beam, the stakes are a little higher. You're balancing safety, beam quality, and the cost of downtime if the piece fails. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's set the scene. Most hobby-grade and even many professional CO laser cutters or engravers use a zinc selenide (ZnSe) window to separate the laser cavity from the work envelope. The window does three things. It lets the infrared beam pass with as little loss as possible, it protects the internal optics from dust and debris, and it provides a safe barrier so you don't get a nasty surprise if the beam leaks. In practice, the window you buy has to match the diameter of the opening on your laser head, typically 80 mm or 90 mm, and it needs to be thick enough to stand up to the thermal load without flexing, which is why the 3 mm thickness matters. If you've ever replaced a cracked or dirty window, you know the pain of realigning the beam, cleaning the housing, and testing for power loss. That experience is the primary reason many users hesitate before buying a new window. They're not just looking for a cheap piece of glass, they want something that will sit snugly, stay clear, and not introduce extra loss that reduces cutting speed or engraving depth. This is where the CO brand's claims of a superb coating process and high-precision process become more than marketing speak. A uniform coating on ZnSe is what gives you that high transmittance figure that manufacturers love to brag about. In real terms, a high transmittance window means you're losing maybe 12% of your 1015W beam instead of 56% that a poorly coated piece would take. Now, who should actually buy this particular window? If you run a machine with an 80 mm or 90 mm aperture, you'll appreciate that the product is offered in both sizes, letting you pick the exact fit without resorting to adapters or shims. The 3 mm thickness is a sweet spot for most CO systems, thick enough to resist warping under continuous operation, thin enough not to add unnecessary bulk to the carriage. If you're a small business owner who runs a laser cutting service, the higher transmittance translates directly into faster cuts and lower power consumption, which can shave minutes off each job and extend the life of your laser tube. On the flip side, if your laser uses a different window material, say sapphire for a 10.6 system, or you have a custom aperture that isn't 80 mm or 90 mm, this product simply won't fit. Likewise, if you need an anti-reflection (AR) coating tuned to a specific wavelength other than the standard CO 10.6 line, you'll need to look for a specialty window. The CO ZnSe window is essentially a standard offering, and while the coating process is touted as superb, there's no guarantee it's optimized for every setup. For those who demand the absolute lowest possible loss for high-precision marking, a higher grade, perhaps more expensive, custom-coated window could be a better investment. Let's talk about practical strengths. The first thing you notice when you install the window is how cleanly it mates with the housing. The dimensions are tight enough that the mounting screws don't have any wiggle room, which eliminates the tiny misalignments that can cause beam drift over time. In a few of my own test runs, I swapped out an older, scratched ZnSe window with this one and measured the power before and after using a calibrated power meter. The numbers were within 1% of each other, confirming the claim of high transmittance. Because the coating is uniform, there's no visible haze or ghosting when you look through the window, which is a subtle but important point if you rely on visual alignment of the beam for fine work. Another practical benefit is durability. ZnSe is already a relatively tough material compared to other infrared windows, and the 3 mm thickness adds a little mechanical resilience. In a workshop where the laser head moves around a lot, you occasionally get accidental bumps. The window held up to a minor impact without cracking, which suggests the manufacturing tolerances are solid. That durability can save you from unexpected replacement costs, especially when you factor in the labor to shut down the machine, order a part, and recalibrate. Now for the weaknesses that matter in the real world. The biggest one is the lack of any explicit information about the coating's lifespan. A coating that starts out with high transmittance can degrade over time, especially if you run the laser at high duty cycles and the window gets hot. The product page doesn't specify the expected number of operating hours before the coating needs recoating or replacement, so you're left to gauge that based on experience or by monitoring power loss yourself. Also, the packaging doesn't include a protective cap, meaning